Hi, Ina. Hi, Carla. Welcome. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
So, quick note before we dive in. London Community Week 2026 is happening in July. And our super early bird offer ends soon. So if you'd like to join us in person, we'd love to see you there. I will leave the link here in the chat so you can explore the agenda and grab your pass. Today, we are excited to welcome Candice Grobler. So where are you, Candice? Just a sec. Yay, she's here.
Hey, everybody.
Candice helps organizations think more intentionally about community growth, and today she will be sharing how community can become a real driver for marketing, advocacy, and sustainable growth. Feel free to drop your questions in the chat as we go. We will save some time for questions and answers at the end. And with that, Candice, over to you.
Thank you so much. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this session. It is really, really lovely to have you here and to have your attention. My speaking coach once told me, like, people paying their attention to you is one of the best compliments that you can get. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. Today, I am here to ask you one main question. What if your audience disappeared overnight? Okay, so a few years ago, a creator I worked with had this massive Instagram following, over 500,000 people, and they earned it. Honestly, they were brilliant behind the camera, vulnerable, real, honestly so relatable that anybody would want to follow them, and it was really addictive. But the whole business was built on one very brittle assumption, and that is that the platform would always be there. And one report that could not be moderated or questioned later, and overnight the account was gone, completely gone, and the audience gone. There was no way of contacting them, no way of reaching out to them to tell them what happened or how to get in touch, and absolutely no place to gather for her to reach out to these people. And this is honestly probably the one place where I'm very much preaching to the choir when I say that when you build on any kind of platform, we're building on borrowed land. And when I talk about a platform, I mean like Instagram, LinkedIn, a platform or a channel that you don't own. Because if your audience's attention lives on Instagram or on LinkedIn, but your relationships don't live in a place where you can control them, then your growth becomes super fragile. Okay. And the platform owns your distribution, it owns your reach and your ability to contact people and to build long-term connections, trust, repeat behavior. Okay. So a community isn't the platform that you build it on. It's the system that turns your audience's attention into something that you can keep. As I mentioned, trust, repeat behavior, and referrals. Because these are things that no matter if the algorithm changes or the account disappears, these are things that you will keep, you will own, you will have earned. And in a time when ownership is very rare, trust is a commodity that is rare. So today I'm going to show you the system that I use to build a community, And that is the community flywheel. But before I jump into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you who don't know, I'm Candice. I am a community strategist, and I've been building community for over 10 years now. I say that because I've worked in so many different roles before that, but community is at the core, has been my driver from the get-go, from when I was organizing surprise parties for my friends in school. You know, I'm pretty sure a lot of you can relate to being that person. So I am obsessed with flywheels because You will find out why soon. But I also have 5 cats. I love to crochet, and I also am obsessed with my new VW van, which I bought and I love. So I love to go on trips with her. So that is a little bit about me. But today, what I really am here to do is to help you learn how to build a community that has a resilient growth engine. So by the end of today, you'll have that simple growth flywheel where you can turn all of the attention that you're getting into trust, conversions, retention, and then referrals in the long term, so that your business isn't at the mercy of one platform or multiple scattered platforms that you have no control over. Okay, so there's this one word that I've said a few times, and I want to make sure that we're all on the same page when we understand when I say growth, okay? Because otherwise, this word can become quite meaningless if we don't understand and have a clear definition on what we're talking about. Because when creators say, I want to grow my community, there's usually one of 4 things they mean, actually, okay? And depending on, we'll get into them now, but depending on which one you're aiming at, you could end up doing a lot of work that feels busy, but doesn't actually move your business, because you might be aiming for the wrong kind of growth, okay? So what are the 4 outcomes that most creators are looking for when they talk about growth? The first is attention. Now, attention is reach. This is more of the right people who are finding you, bumping into you, and continuously discovering your content and the work that you're putting out there into the world. Then we have trust. When I talk about trust, I mean conversion. This is people who actually believe that you can help them. There's a very big difference between that. People who listen and people who actually buy into what you say. Taking that first meaningful step is like by buying, by subscribing, by joining, that is proving that they trust you. The third kind of growth is engagement. You might want repeat behavior. You want people staying. You want them coming back, renewing, and then also progressing throughout what they're trying to do. You don't want them to just stagnate and stay in one place, because that leads to the last kind of growth, and that is through referrals. That is advocacy. That is another kind of way where members bring in other members, where they do the inviting, the sharing, the testimonials, the collaborating. And these are 4 very different types of systems that you can build. So when you say, I want to grow my community, you have to get very specific about what are you talking about? Which of these areas are you aiming to grow in? Because they also address different things. And if your community isn't improving at least one of these, it's not actually helping you grow, okay? And it's not helping you grow your business or the business. So it's fine if you're not trying to do that with the community, but most of us here are trying to prove ROI, trying to grow, trying to make sure that it actually continues to retain and engage people. So in the comments, I'm very curious, for those of you who are here, please do tell me, what is your weakest lever right now out of these? Is it attention, trust, engagement, referrals, or advocacy? Which of these are struggling? There's no judgment. It's just so that we know, denial, just getting over that first step of denial of what is the biggest thing that you struggle with? For me personally, my biggest thing in my community right now is we've got a new community platform. So engagement is our biggest worry. So I need to improve that. I see Amniris in the comments also says engagement. So does Nslonga. Thank you so much. Please keep sharing as I keep moving forward. I'd appreciate it. Are we going to get back to you? So I want to talk to you today about these 4 different systems. And basically, this is the machine for turning attention into what I was talking about, okay? So when I mean flywheel, what I mean by a flywheel is a funnel is awful. I hate a funnel because you have to keep moving things from the bottom of the funnel to the top of the funnel. that takes a lot of effort. That manual labor is a lot of operational load for my brain and for a lot of other people. But a flywheel, once you get it spinning, it actually, the one thing feeds into the other thing. Like when you get enough attention, that converts into trust, which converts into engagement, which naturally converts into referrals. This is a very proven marketing process, okay? Like HubSpot and like made it famous. I've just converted it for communities. And so if you feel like you're in a community where it's a treadmill, you post, you push, you host, you hype up everything, and then the moment you stop, everything dies. You step away. I see Sam nodding in the camera there. There's definitely like it's exhausting. And I really believe if you want to stop being exhausted and you want to build a community that is sustainable, you have to understand this flywheel and you have to make sure you have systems to move people through it. Okay. And so the systems I'm going to talk you through are essentially, firstly, let me say that when you're talking about attention, what we're talking about is we are talking about leads, okay? We're talking about people who you don't know, like necessarily. They are out there in the ether. This is where your promise lies, okay? Your promise is your offer, your value proposition, your like conversion strategy. What is your promise? What are you promising to your audience? That is a lot of strategic work. Then what you do is you convert those leads into customers. And once they are customers, you have to have a really solid onboarding system in order to convert them into participants, right? Who then in the long term become referrals and in turn then will hopefully bring in new people. Okay, so that's how the users fit into this picture. But let me jump into the different segments a little bit more deeply, okay? So for the promise stage, basically what I mean by this is a lot of people try to sabotage you. Like we sabotage ourselves, right? By trying to be absolutely inclusive to everybody. This community is for anybody who is feeling lonely or is and on this side and who also wants to do some accountability and who also wants this. We try to make the room bigger and hope that will generate engagement. But a community promise has two main parts. And the first is who it is for, as well as what changes for them if they stay. But that is very important to notice who it is not for at the same time. It's the only way to create a sense of commonality by actually saying who is not going to get anything from this space. Because by doing that, you actually create this in-group, out-group mentality, which if you Google in-group, out-group mentality, there's a lot of psychology behind it. I'm not going to go into that now. But my advice to you is one system you can use is to write one promise sentence, okay, with who it's for and what do they get by being here in your community. And then write one sentence of who it is not for. And then go stick it everywhere on your website, on your landing page, on your front page, and then start seeing who echoes that back to you, almost like it's a war cry. And that can be your metric of how many people are echoing back to you, this is my space. I am here because I resonate with this. What that does is that converts attention into trust, because it gets people along that flywheel of saying, oh, wait, you understand me, you understand the process and the journey I'm on, and you're going to offer me something for it. Okay, so that's how we fit into this side of the journey here, the promise. Once we have captured someone's attention, we've converted them, they are now trusting us. They are our customers, right? We have to make sure that they are onboarded really, really well. And a lot of us see onboarding as admin. I'm not going to lie. Like, admin can be, it's just another thing that has to happen, but it is absolutely vital for identity formation. It is the moment that someone decides, I belong here, or I'm one of these people. I see myself here. I see myself growing. Or they decide, I'm just a tourist. I'm here. I'm gone. Goodbye. It is your job to engineer a first week where they understand the culture, they take one core action, and they get a response, a human response from that actually makes it worth returning. Okay, so this is very much about the habit loop: trigger, action, reward. You want to make sure in that first week, your trigger gets them to take an action that rewards them well enough that makes them want to come back. And if you get that right, like, that is when you know people will start actually being able to get that early win, essentially. Okay, so just quickly on the onboarding, completion rate is like, with your onboarding, don't think of your onboarding of, oh, they finished my course, they are onboarded. It's important to say, what is the most core action that someone takes that is a predictor of whether they're going to be successful in this community? What is it introducing themselves? Is it attending an event? Is it basically being introduced to another member and actually having a membership, a mentorship introduction? You know, what is that percentage that is successful within the first 7 days? That is a better indicator than, oh, they finished our onboarding course and they managed to click 20 times through the course material, you know? So onboarding drives trust, and in the long-term retention, it is very, very important to move people from follower into being a participant. And so that takes us to the early win. Now, with the early win, this is because members that don't see progress early don't trust you. They don't believe that they can achieve what you say that they're going to achieve when they're in your community. So, and if that happens, the attention is going to drift immediately because they're not seeing rewards. So the early one doesn't need to be huge. It needs to be quick, and it needs to be attainable. Something that gets them to have that first mindset shift. Something that gets them to see the potential in themselves and actually like get addicted to their progress rather than a like, or someone saying they thought the introduction looked pretty, you know? So one ritual you can introduce here is like a tiny challenge. You could have a template that people have to complete. Maybe it's an instant hot seat where they record themselves and post for advice as they get into the community. Make sure that that action has that very, very quick reward, and that members can report on their completion in the first week, 2 weeks max. You know, if they can post, that is teaching them and training them that reporting back is how I get engagement on what I'm doing and how I prove that I am part of this community. Remember, you teach people how to treat you, teach them what to do. And if you can do that, those early wins, they will drive trust and retention. And that is proof. That is your proof point, right? Of, oh, people are winning in my community. Come join the community. That is like gold before you can get a testimonial. Then I just want to go back here so you can see. So after the early win, we get into the engagement portion of growth. So this is where contribution becomes exceptionally important. Okay, so this is the pivot from a creator-led audience where you do the leading to a member-led community. Okay, this is where your community's value shifts, and there's a tipping point from you having to constantly do the feeding to actually turning to your members and giving them space to create, giving them space to own. And so if every good moment in your space comes from you posting, you're just building another channel where other people can comment. it shouldn't be a space where you are the most interesting person and you have the most exciting things to say. You should be identifying people in your community that can help you, because a community becomes real when people start helping each other and without needing to be prompted for it. Okay, so those are the actions that you need to be encouraging beyond that. And how I like to do this is I like to make sure that there is a ritual of some sort that encourages contribution in your members. Because once again, you're training them, but they need to have some sort of trigger. They need to contribute, which is the action, and they also need to be rewarded for that contribution. And that, based on that reward, will get them coming back again, right? So if there's anything you remember that habit loop, because the metrics you want to be tracking here is more around member to member replies, not likes, replies. How many times did a member step up and run an event in your community? How many times did you have a member ask you if they could run a book club, or if they could start something themselves? If they offer or ask for it, have you ever asked back, would you like to run this kind of thing or help us coordinate this kind of thing? Very often we get shy, but volunteers is how community grows. Volunteers is how it runs. I mean, this community is a very good example of that, for example. So you really need to identify the people who can contribute, who are contributing, because that comes in very important in the next step. Contribution also is important because that proves your retention. Is someone contributing? Do they contribute consistently? When they stop contributing, why? That tells you about churn, right? So remember, contribution. Okay. Then we get into advocacy. Now, advocacy isn't when I say advocacy, I don't mean a referral link. Like, I'm not talking about like how I track, like that is the program, that is the system behind the thing. But I'm talking about the behavior that comes from people identifying with your mission, identifying with what you are trying to do so much that they put their hand up because something woke them up at night and they got excited and that you have to know about this plan. And people advocate when community is a reflection of who they are. If the community made them better, if they would feel proud to actually bring someone in the room and say, hey, you need this space, that is when people start to advocate. Okay, so the system that you can start to build here is, again, training members. Have another system once a month, not once a week, but once a month, where they have to bring a friend, and that is baked into the social fabric of what you do. I know Toastmasters has a very, very good example of, if you go to a Toastmasters event, they are the most welcoming of guests. Even though you're not necessarily there to speak, they really want you to feel welcome and informed. And it's one of the best experiences. I go and do it. You'll enjoy it. So make sure that it is embedded into the culture of your community that we share, we help, we contribute, we bring friends in. Because if that is embedded into the activities you promote and into the rituals you run, that will help with your advocacy growth. Okay, just want to go back and show you where we are so we're over here with referrals. And then what comes next is here, sitting between attention and referrals. And that is the amplification system that you can build for yourself. Now, this amplification system, essentially, this is where community stops just being a cost center and it actually becomes a marketing asset, okay? Cost center, and what I mean by that is we put a lot into our communities, running events, making content, scheduling speakers, all of the behind the scenes things like automations that don't even come up. It can be very expensive to run a community, but you can be smart about what you produce and what content you encourage in your community so that it becomes a marketing tool. And visibility doesn't become just post more or make more content, but visibility becomes create artifacts that people share, that carry your promise and proof of what you do into the world. So if your community is creating the content around what you're working on, put it out there into the world. Make sure that it gets showcased. Rituals that you can do is member spotlights, public replays. You can do shareable templates or listicles from members. You could even run, I know the Community Hive, they run member panels. They ask their members at the end of the year who wants to come be in a panel discussion, and that's how they fill their calendar for the rest of the year, is all their members just put up their hands. Incredibly useful. And then all those members obviously share and join, and that just, again, boosts this whole ecosystem or this whole flywheel and keeps it spinning, right? So the metric you want to keep an eye out for here to know that you're winning is like how much content is sourced from the community and how much of it is yours. Okay, so you want to make sure you are emphasizing to this member-led approach, because that is how the sustainableness comes into this. Okay, and it also means you drive attention by, like, if we look back to our little flywheel over here, by amplifying from content in your community, amplifying your members become advocates. Their testimonials, their stories become your promise. They drive attention, and that also helps with your trust, because you're not telling your stories, your members are telling your stories. Even better if you can get members to post about what you're doing, rather than just building a system that you've got to make content about what's happening in your community, but there's already content that should be golden, right? Okay, so just to close this off, this section here, I want to say that for creators, community changes the unit economics of trust. Okay, so instead of re-earning attention from scratch every single day, you should build repeatable interactions where members can see proof, get momentum, and then bring other people in. Okay, so you shouldn't be trying to just grow the community. Pick what step in the flywheel you are actually trying to build and focus on one system at a time, improving it, because these systems will get your flywheel spinning, even if not all at once. You focus on what your business needs most importantly, right, at a time. So now I want to talk a little bit about the sort of what people get wrong about, or what people want most about amplification is they want community-led growth. They want to grow. They want more eyes on their community, and it's really difficult to do that because a lot of people end up turning their community into unpaid marketers, right? Now that's like a very big flag that I hear a lot of people potentially raising, is you don't want to turn your community in, you don't want to use them. You don't want to use them in the wrong ways. And the problem is that I see a lot of people, oh, sorry, my slides got a little bit tangled. There we go. I see a lot of people trying to jump straight into the please share state of they're asking their community, hey, please go and share, please go and do this, but you haven't earned the right to ask. You haven't earned the right to prove that you're going to give them anything back for what they do, for the amplification, for the advocacy. And so it's very important to realize that advocacy is a ladder. You cannot skip the rungs. It really feels needy. It doesn't work. Because your job is to design the rungs beyond participate. So you can't do much you can try to get people engaged. You can lead the horse to water. You cannot make them drink, right? You can build the systems. They have to participate. Up until that, if you can make it as easy as possible, as habitual as possible, you can make it as seamless so that it's like, fits into their workflow or into their day. But when it comes to contribution, that is where you have a lot of control. You have the power to build systems that make contributors out of your members, to say, this is how contribution works in our community. And the best way I like to do that is to first identify, where is our pain points? Where are we drowning? Because that is where we are ripe for getting some support from our members, right? And then how do we get that kind of support? Maybe you need people to help you run events. Maybe you need people to help write articles, edit articles, just maybe even approve members. It might be those are things that you can outsource and you can reward people for doing in your community. Maybe you give them a membership, So figure out what it is that's going to get people contributing and build those habits, because that is when you can build the invite your friend, your referral program that makes it easy for people to get in, because you can build the referral links. But until people are absolutely ready to contribute, there is no ways they're going to invite their friends. They don't see the value in the space yet. They aren't participating. They aren't getting a lot out of it yet. And so when you get people inviting people, that's a really good indicator. But beyond that, when they sign up to put their hand up and co-host running sessions, that's an extra level of contribution. It's not just, hey, I'm doing something small to help out, but I'm actually coming in and running a program for you, or I'm coming in and becoming a community manager. That is something that some communities really have scope for. Then lastly comes the testimonial and case study. So if you look really nicely, like you have control to make all of these things easier for members, but you can't make them do any of these things. You just have to make these systems sync beautifully within each other so that it's easy for members and habitual, so that they can do it again and again and again. Okay, so I just want to mention quickly that this last thing is the sustainable nature. It's really just important to note that self-sustaining doesn't mean that you disappear and the community magically runs itself, okay? It's never going to happen. Like, that's not what we're aiming for here. But it does mean that the value doesn't collapse when you're having a really hard week where you just need a bit of a break. It means that you have that breathing room, okay? So remember that a community only sustains itself when member-to-member value becomes greater than creator-to-member value. It cannot always be, and that is how you burn out, by being the sole provider, right? The question becomes, what are the minimum systems that I can keep up that may help me maintain momentum without you having to be the main character in the story and run the whole show? Okay. For me, a very basic operating cadence that I like to use for sustainability when I'm building my engagement strategy is having a weekly something, one ritual that brings people in. One ritual could fill any one of those systems that we just spoke about. Your one monthly showcase and collaborate moments. I love to do a showcase once a month, make sure everyone knows what amazing things are happening, what our members are doing. I think that is one of the best ways to reward them for their participation. And then something quarterly. You want to make sure that there's some way of reflecting. We have seasons. Our bodies are used to seasons. If you can play into that with what you do, you can play into what your members are experiencing at that moment in their real lives, right? We're all humans. Like, I'm going through winter right now. It's miserable. I know for a lot of people in other sides of the world, it's being summer, and I can feel happy for them. But if my audience is undergoing winter and we want to have a celebration, maybe we need to reconsider how to experience that celebration. You want to think about that kind of seasonality. So 2 guardrails that you can steal with this, just to be aware of, is that you must stop doing everything that works only when you're on. Okay, so don't do a weekly, monthly, or quarterly thing that only depends on you. In the long term, you should be able to substitute yourself out for an automation or for a human, especially when connections involved. Secondly, you must systemize the boring bits. Okay, don't be shy of automation. In this day and age, I'm so sorry, but AI and automation are here to stay. They're going to make community management easier. I think it's very important to be clear on where you will use AI and automation and where you will not, because it's going to compromise the human experience. But don't do the admin, because we don't need to anymore. We really don't. It's not necessary. That's my opinion. So just a reminder, as I'm closing off, community becomes a growth engine when it consistently improves one of these 4 outcomes, okay? Attention, trust, retention, or referrals, or advocacy. And the fastest way to build that is not by making more content. It's not by running more programs. It's by getting this flywheel to work one step at a time and building those systems that set up this flywheel to move. Okay, so here's your homework from me. For those of you who are into that kind of thing, I've put together a little worksheet that can help you just figure out what is your weakest lever, make a little strategy around what are you going to focus on, what little, oh gosh, my words have escaped me. What you're going to focus on, and how you can actually fix your weakest system in your community. So please take a look at that. And then I am very excited for all the questions that I see that have come through.
Yay, thank you so much, Candice, for sharing all of this with us. It was really insightful. I'd love your perspective on the ladder. I mean, step by step, that's it, day by day. So, Francisco, are you around? I think Francisco want to share something special with us before we open it up for questions.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So, we are in the final 72 hours of the super early bird for London Community Week. This is the ads section, okay? We are not on YouTube, but we have ads. No, so I just wanted to share with everyone, a heads up that is the final 72 hours to grab your London Community Week ticket. We have, let me try to do it here. It says that I can do it. So I want to share quickly with you this one. Let me know if you can hear it. Hey, there you go. Sorry, Candice, for the interruption. This is a short teasing for everyone. 72 hours. So if you are planning to come, or if you were curious, this is kind of a quick teaser of everything. Now it's time for questions. Back to Paola and Candice. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Francisco. So let's open it up, Candice, for a few questions. The first one from Akash. He is asking, Candice, which of those 6 pillars do you see people mess up the most? And what does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, cool. So, hi, Akash. Thank you so much for the question. I just wanted to bring up the 6 systems that I was speaking about the most. So, I think the biggest and the most painful that I see people mess up is the promise. They don't think of this as a full system that works together. It is very much often lives in marketing land. So it is what is the overall branding of the community? What is the offer that often lives maybe in the sales department? What are we going to price this at? Then we have what are we going to deliver, the strategy, the architecture, and those often fit across multiple different teams, I find. And so it's a very complex thing to get right. And a lot of the communities that get built that I end up auditing, they have built a very amazing party room where everyone can gather and meet, and they throw them all in, and there's a lot of people, and they make enough noise that it seems like a community, but they don't have a good idea of why are the people here? What a transformation journey are they on? What are we supposed to be promising them? And they don't understand churn because they don't have the metrics for even, understanding what does success look like. So they don't understand what are people like, why are people not being successful here in the community? So I think for me, the biggest and the most painful when I see people get wrong is this promise. And it's also one of the hardest things to fix in retrospect. It's very hard to pivot, especially a really big community. When, like, I audited this community, they had 30,000 people and they had no value proposition. They were just throwing everyone in their product community into a community space and assuming that they would be interested. But they had suppliers, they had merchants, they had all different roles in one space. They had no journey, no idea of what this community was supposed to do. And then we had to try and pivot it, and they just decided to shut down the community because it would be worth more to fix it than to actually build a new one. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that explains what it practically looks like.
Thank you. So, second question from Wishme. I hope I am saying your name right. I am pronouncing it right. So, Candice, at what point do you think is the best to start with member-to-member value addition and member-led activities?
I definitely think that it's once they're onboarded, though it depends, right? Because you might have your advocates helping you with onboarding. So, but if we're thinking about a single person's journey, once they are past the attention phase and they are onboarded, because once they are onboarded, they have saved your community, downloaded your app, they've got all the basics, they can re-access it again. That's what you want to do with your onboarding, right? And so I would say almost immediately, if you can bring in a community member, like one of my favorite things to do, especially with an internal community inside a company, right, is when you're building, when you're onboarding a new person, a new hire, you pair them up with an old person in the company who's been there for years, and they have regular coffee chats that are not related to work. I have seen that improve retention and raise questions in hiring, like in the hiring process or in the sort of HR process way in advance. So it can be a really good idea to engage people on the advocacy level in helping, who are high contributors in helping you with your onboarding process, because that will help make your onboarding process more rewarding. And it makes it more genuine in a way, because if I'm onboarding you, I'm going to be very excited about my community. But if someone in my community is onboarding you, they're going to be a lot more honest. They don't have as much skin in the game. They don't feel as much like a salesperson. So this is where I would get members involved who are way more experienced. And this is how you create opportunities in your onboarding or very early on for your contributors to contribute. I hope that answers that question.
Yes. So, Candice, Ashley missed the QR code, and she's asking if you can share the link in the chat, if you have it easier.
The link for...
The
Sorry.
last QR code that you shared.
Oh,
If you have the link,
yes.
you can share with us. Or yes, maybe share the QR code again. That's a good idea. Thank you.
I'll share the QR code and I'll also
Yes.
pull up the link.
Thank
There's
you.
the link for everybody.
So next question. Amneris is asking if the community shouldn't be a broadcast, how do we deal with other teams who want to use the community as a place to share out resources?
Okay, that's a really good. I had this problem with my client today. Oh, it made me really mad. But the thing is, you can run an event that can be like, or you can have an activation that is like an activation. By activation, I mean a community activation, a community platform, an event, whatever you're running. That's going to be loud and exciting, and everyone's going to want to be involved, right? How do you screen out of that? Is you say to them, okay, the purpose of this event is, and who is this event for? I think the most importantly actually is who is this event for? Because once you know who this event is for, you have a lot, or who this community, let's say this community is for, then you know what they can do in it, right? So if your community is for product or your product base, then you can say, okay, the aim of this channel in the community is to do this. The aim of this is to do this. And if they fit the audience, whatever they want to share, if it's relevant to the audience and it's going to add value to the audience, by all means, we can make a process to make that easy for you. But if it doesn't reach the right audience, like if you're over here and you realize, listen, everybody in this community are leads. Why are you trying to get me to do advocacy things? They're not going to refer anyone. They don't even customers, So then you have a leg to stand on and say, this is not the right channel for you. So you have to think of your community as a channel, and you also have to think of all your different channels in your community as channels. Your newsletter is also a channel, and it has a certain purpose. Not everyone can go in there. If it helps further the goals of the newsletter, sure, here's a form, you can fill it in, I'll add it to the newsletter. But if not, I'm so sorry, it's not useful to my members, and therefore you can't post that here.
Yes.
That is my candid approach. That's why I call my company Candid.
Yes. Next question from Sam. Could you talk more on what you meant by the quarterly reset? Is that something internal?
No. So quarterly, so you can have a quarterly anything, right? So I would have one touch point weekly, one touch point monthly, and one quarterly. You could do it seasonally, like, if you want, or one of my clients runs a financial advisor community. And so they run by the annual financial year, for example. That is the seasonality of that community. So you can build in your own checkpoints, but I always do a quarterly reset with my community. And that's basically an opportunity to reflect on, because we fill in, one of our weekly ritual is to fill in an accountability form on what we did in the week and how we're progressing. And then I send them a quarterly report that I generate with AI based on all of the reports they've generated. And then we meet up and we do a quarterly reset where everyone reflects on their goals, how they were doing, and we reset our goals for the year. So that's just an example of one thing you can do. But I've seen other things quarterly that you can do. Goal setting and goal planning is really useful if you have an accountability community. But like I said, for my financial advisors, or even one of my other clients, going into season, into December in South Africa is season. It's tourist season, right? So going into season, ahead of season, we do a lot of training for merchants for seasonal staff, so that they know how to onboard their seasonal staff. So you can create quarterly touch points or seasonal touch points, if you will, with your members, as long as you do 4 a year would be my recommendation, and it becomes a regular thing. It might become like a regular conference or touch point, for example.
Yes, thank you. Next one, we've got a few questions today. So Maddie is asking, would love to hear tactics people are deploying to boost engagement when people are now using AI to get their questions answered instead of asking the community.
So sorry, do you mind repeating that again?
Yes, we would love to hear tactics people are deploying to boost engagement when people are now using AI to get their questions answered instead of asking the community.
Okay, so what's important there is you need to understand what kind of community you have, right? If you have a support communities, I think, are going to be hardest hit by AI. I'm not going to lie, because a support community is a very transactional community. People coming there, they are clients, but their intention when they're coming there is very transactional. They want something and then they're going to be out. They're not even going to say thank you. They're just like, I'm out. I got my answer. Bye. It's a very transactional thing. And so support communities are going to need to pivot and figure out, what do we do to support members throughout their growth journey that doesn't mean information? So you can say, okay, map out the growth journey. What is it from day one, the youngest person in your community, what do they do? And what does the most established person look like? What do they do in their day-to-day, right? Map that out. And then you need to figure out, how is it that we are going to get them to move further along that journey, okay? Because that is essentially what you're doing, is if you can interview your most established members, figure out, what did they get? What got them contributing? What made them interested? What made them want to be here? And that tells you what the rewards are that you need to recreate, okay? That tells you, what is it that's going to get people coming back? So user research is always my first port of call if you're having an engagement problem. Talk to people who are leaving, ask them why. Talk to people who are engaging, ask them why. And then with, what do you do? Like, what have I seen that works? Okay. Masterminds is working exceptionally well right now, especially if you work with entrepreneurship communities or anyone who runs their own business, if they're your audience, if they are business-minded. A mastermind, and when I say a mastermind, I mean putting humans in the room together to talk about their experiences. And I think that support communities are going to need to pivot to providing more of those kinds of experiences where, for example, if you run a business that serves multiple industries, then you run, on a Monday, you run a stand-up for the beauty and health industry. On Tuesday, you run for food and beverage. On Wednesday, you run a session. And that's when you get them in a room and you ask them, what are you dealing with? What problems are you, and how are you solving it? You don't stand there and say you have the answers. I think that's important. And this is what Tom said in the last month's session. Actually, you should go watch it if you haven't. But we shouldn't be creating, we should be facilitating. We should be facilitating human on human interaction, because that is what we want, right? You don't want to be like the one person running everything. So I've seen those work exceptionally well. I've also seen what you have to make big communities into smaller communities in some way, because a really big community is easy to get drowned out in. It's really easy to like not build a habit, because there's just so much happening and you're like one in a million. It can feel like sometimes, right? But if you have a smaller group that keeps you accountable or that misses you, then you're going to want to go back and check in, like just as a human being, right? At the end of the day. So if you have a really big community, try to figure out ways to run smaller programs that you don't have to run, that are member-led, that help people connect with each other, because that is what's going to beat AI these days. Is AI is always going to win on information. It's always going to win on speed. It's just going to, but AI cannot tell, like often with your members, they've only seen into their business or into their situation, right? They know their problems, but they haven't seen into 20 companies and seen that problem 20 times and seen how they've solved it. So the best information that is not on the internet is experiential information. It's me sitting there speaking to another human who's like me, who is also like, oh my gosh, this was my problem. I solved it like this last week. Or I still haven't solved this problem, but I've tried A, B, C, D, E, and G, and this is the best solution. So putting people that again takes people away from a creator-led approach or creator to member-led approach to being using engagement approaches that are member-led.
Thank you. So, Ron's question. Our network has about 250,000 small business owners. They're all doing different things. How do you recommend implementing a mentoring program at scale?
Ooh, fun. I love mentorship programs and business owners on my niche. So this is like really right up my alley. So I actually have implemented a few mentorship programs, not at 250,000 people. I'm actually going to be building one for 200,000 people very soon, though. So I have done a bit of thinking around this. And my step one is run a beta. I think that is something that I actually learned from Francisco because he ran a beta program for the Led by Mentorship community. And essentially what that did was it allowed us to, we asked everyone who wants to join, who's interested, and we got people to apply. And then we ran a very small MVP of what could a matching process look like, right? Because that's like the operations behind it. There's no way other than doing. You mustn't try and automate a system you've never run manually before, right? Because then you never know what the flaws are in your process or in your system before you've automated it. So run it as MVP and manually as you can with Google Forms, and I use Notion. That's one of my favorite things. And run it with a small beta group. See, if you send 1,000 people an invite, see how many people apply. That's a great test, so that's going to give you a metric of how many people are going to apply to be mentors or how many people are going to apply to be mentees. I would definitely run it like that with the business community because they're all doing different things. Let some people be mentors, let some people be mentees, and then you must dictate what that program is going to look like, right? You must make sure that they know. So have a call with them. I think a lot of people are very scared to jump on a call with their mentees and mentors and onboard them. Like, make sure you treat it like a proper program, onboard them, teach them what they're supposed to do, and run it like a beta program. And then get your results. That will tell you, what would this look like at scale? What does it take? How much capacity did that take from our team? How much capacity, what tooling, what was the tooling and operational lift there? Now, what would it take to scale that? And that will help make it easier to make a educated guess on what implementing it at scale will look like. And I definitely would have a phased approach to implementation, right? Like, you might decide that you've got premium members, they get it first. They get to test it out first. You might decide that, and then you'll phase it out to everybody else. So that would be my recommendation. If you want to know more about my programs and what I ran and what I did, please, Ron, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to have a coffee chat with you.
Yes, we are on time. I just shared your LinkedIn in our chat, Candice. I think people were talking about this also before. So thank you again for sharing your insights with us today. And thank you everyone for joining and being part of the conversation. If you enjoyed today's session, we'd love to see you at future Community Creators events with Led by Community. Feel free to stay connected with Candice as well and continue the conversation. Have an amazing rest of your day and see you soon. Bye.